Let's wait for the fam to come in. What's up, everybody? Hello, good morning. My hair's looking a little wet. Just got out the shower not that long ago. Wow. Let's wait for everybody to come in. We are live on Instagram. This is recorded, or this will be recorded and posted to YouTube later on. Good morning. Let's wait for everybody to come on. We're going to be going over the astrology of the week, starting off with our full moon in Aries today. So, are you guys feeling the full moon energy? I am. I woke up in the middle of the night. Well, actually, I woke up like maybe around like 4 or 5 in the morning. I guess that wasn't the middle of the night, but I woke up all energized and excited and like I'm like, oh, full moon in Aries energy. It's time to go blow some stuff up. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's my Scorpio stellium speaking out right there. Good morning, everybody. You just someone said they just hung up on their husband because Louis is live and we gotta go. Oh, Billie Eilish is in the. I love Billie Eilish, by the way. It's one of my favorite modern pop singers. Um, it's so funny. So you hung up on your husband? Oh my gosh. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Let's wait for some people to come in. So, wow, what a busy week astrologically that we have. Mercury has just gone into Scorpio. Anybody feel the shift of Mercury moving into Scorpio? We're gonna have Mercury in Scorpio for the next few weeks. Let me actually look that up right now. How long we're gonna have Mercury in Scorpio for? Mercury, it's the first thing we're going to talk about today is Mercury going to Scorpio until October 29th. So we're going to have Mercury in Scorpio for about 3 weeks, going into Scorpio season. I actually do think that we're going to have a Mercury retrograde, I believe, in Sagittarius. So I do believe that Mercury is going to go into Sag and then go back into Scorpio. But let me just double check. Hold on. Think we're gonna have a Mercury retrograde in Sag. Yeah, yeah. So we do have a Mercury retrograde in Sag, where Mercury is going to go back into the late degrees of Scorpio. So we have that Mercury retrograde. I'll give you guys the dates for those of you that live in the future. Many of us astrologers live in the future, and many of us with anxiety, paranoia live in the future as well. Let's see. Hold on. Oh, Mercury goes retrograde on the 10th, it looks like, November 10th. Someone said the energy is angry. Yeah, the full moon in Aries energy is definitely Mars, right? Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet of anger, of rage, of war. Mars has a lot to do with being assertive. The sign of Aries, is about being independent, doing your own thing, standing up for yourself, fighting for yourself. Aries is by far one of the most courageous, bravest signs. It's ruled by Mars. The sun, which is the planet of the ego and the self, exalts, is extra strong in the sign of Aries. That's why sometimes people think that Aries is a little selfish, especially when people have their sun in the sign of Aries. But you got to understand, Aries is a pioneer. Aries is the individual. Aries is a sign that keeps the world moving, keeps things going. That's one of the things I love about Aries is like when they fall down, they get right back up and continue the fight. You know what I mean? Aries is a very resilient sign. They're very impatient, but they are very resilient. They're hard to keep down, and that's one of the, qualities of Mars. Welcome, everybody. We got a new wave of people coming in who just got the notification that we are live. We're going over the astrology of the week ahead. What I'm talking about right now is the sign of Aries and the archetype of Aries, and I'm talking about Mars. Well, Scorpio, the other sign ruled by Mars, and the sign of Aries, right? Aries is the masculine side of Mars, Scorpio is the feminine side of Mars. These signs are incredibly resilient. They are hard to kill. You know what I mean? They're hard to take down. These are signs that are very competitive. Mars thrives in competition. Mars thrives when he has something to fight for, when he's has something to defend. I think that's one of the qualities that we also forget about Mars is that not only is he a fighter and a warrior, right, but he's also a protector. He's also a guardian in a lot of ways. And, we see Mars come out to play when people feel like they have to protect their kids or protect their family and things like this, right? So Mars is also a defender. And I think that's one of the things that we get with the feminine side of Mars, Scorpio as well, is we get this kind of self-protective, this kind of sensitive quality. One of the things that people also, I think, tend to overlook about Mars people, about Aries and Scorpios, they're actually very sensitive and they're very delicate when it comes to self-criticism and things like this. And I think that's one of the things that we see with Martian people, people that have a strong Mars imprint in their chart, they have a lot of Scorpio, a lot of Aries, is they can be very, sensitive to criticism. They can have a hard time dealing with leaders or having leaders or authority figures above them that criticize them or that tell them what to do. Mars is a planet and Aries is a sign that does not like to be told what to do. It doesn't like hierarchy. It doesn't like, rules and regulations. And Aries, if they don't agree, right? If Aries doesn't agree with the principles of the matter, or it doesn't agree with leadership, or doesn't agree with like the morals and the ethics of the war, what they're fighting for, they will say something. They will stand up and they will defy authority. And that's one of the things that we see with Aries as well. And that may be a theme even with this full moon in Aries. Everybody coming in, welcome. Thank you guys for being here. We may feel with this full moon in Aries that we want to defy, authority in some type of way, or we want to assert ourselves. We want to set ourselves apart. Aries is also a sign that tends to be a loner. I don't think a lot of people see that a lot with Aries or understand that, but Aries is the lone wolf, right? Aries is the archetype of, the individual that's going to go ahead and fight their own war and they're going to stand out and they don't care if people don't agree with them. They don't care if people don't like them. I think that's one of the things that I really admire about Aries people as well, is this ability to kind of be like, well, I really don't give a there's like this such a strong, such a strong rooted sense of self that they don't care if they're coming up against disagreement or if they're coming up against disapproval or if they're coming up against criticism with those around them, right? They're still going to be passionately, staunchly connected to their beliefs, to their desires, they're going to still going to fight for themselves and things like that, right? So, that's one of the things that I really admire about Aries energy is its ability to, really stand up for itself and to not be afraid to be the antagonist or be, the one that's wrong in a crowd of people that think they're right, right? Or the one that's right in a crowd of people that think they're wrong. I have a lot of admiration for the sign of Aries in that way. But also, Aries is a very toxic sign. Let's be honest, Aries being ruled by Mars rules over a lot of difficult things that we have to deal with in our everyday life. Aries has a lot to do with, violence, and Aries rules over guns, and Aries rules over war. Aries rules over blood, right? When we're talking about a full moon in Aries, we're talking about the parts of the body. Also, if you didn't watch my full moon in Aries overview that I did on Saturday, it's posted on YouTube. You can also go back on my page and watch it. I did a whole hour and a half live going into detail about the full moon in Aries that we're having today. And if you want to go and watch that, highly recommend it. There, I dropped some really juicy info there with that full moon in Aries, right? Live that we did. But yeah, so we start off the week with our full moon in Aries. Like I was saying, Aries can be a very dangerous, very violent, very angry sign. Aries, can be a sign that is, restless and impatient and doesn't really think about the consequences of their actions until afterwards. And I think that's one of the things that we see with Aries is, this is a sign that takes things to an extreme. They take a fight, they take a moment of anger, they take a moment of, war to the extreme to where they can, go so far that they do something that they really regret, right? And I think that's one of the things that we want to remember about this full moon in Aries energy. It's going to have us feeling very impatient. It's going to have us feeling very impulsive. It's going to have us feeling very emotionally triggered, right? We're talking about the moon in a fire sign. The moon doesn't really like to be in a fire sign. The moon's agitated and frustrated when, because the moon is watery, right? The moon is a watery, sensitive planet. And when you put it in fire, it's like, it's wounded, it's irritated, it's frustrated, it's like boiling water, right? And so when we have that full moon in Aries energy in the air, we want to think about, our tempers boiling and, us feeling very aggressive and people feeling very combative and people feeling very passionate and very inspired and also sexual because the ruler of this full moon in Aries is Mars and Scorpio, right? So there is this element of, sexuality and taboo and secrecy and hidden things and getting to the bottom of motives and things like this with this full moon, with, being disposited by Mars and Scorpio. But we also want to think about, really cooling our tempers and really like before we jump into action or before we start fighting or arguing, before we just get triggered and react to the trigger, to the energy, we want to think like, wait a minute, is this fight really worth it? Is this going to be more constructive for my cause? Are the consequences of my actions going to bring me closer to my goals or what I want out of this outcome with the situation? Or is it actually, am I self-sabotaging, right? Am I burning a bridge here? Am I, just, and I think that's one of the things I've seen with Aries people as well. When I read chart, because I do a lot of chart readings and I do a lot of readings for Aries people, and one of the things I've noticed is that they have a really bad habit of destroying their foundation or just burning everything down in a moment of like disrespect or in a moment of disagreement with someone or in a moment of anger. One of the things I've noticed with Aries people is, they'll have a moment where they go off on a boss, or they go off on a coworker, they go off on a client, or they start arguing and fighting with someone on the street, and then it really, results in something very, very dramatic or traumatic where it's like self-destructive, right? I've seen a lot of Aries ruin their careers, ruin, a really good thing that they got going at their job because they have a moment where they just let it out, and, they get in a fight with the boss or they get in a fight with the client or something, and they really do themselves in. So when we're talking about a full moon in Aries, we want to, the important thing to keep in mind is self-regulation when it comes to our emotions, right? Our emotions are very, very volatile when we have a moon in Aries. I don't know if, does anyone here have a moon in Aries? Any of you guys have a moon in Aries? Here, anyone here tapping in live on Instagram? One of the things I've noticed with Aries moon people is, really hard to regulate the emotions. The emotions, they move really, really fast, but in general, the default emotion is defensiveness, is, anger, is fighting, is, being, triggered very, very quickly, right? And things like that. So, oh, we have a lot of, oh, look, we got quite a few Aries moon women here. Oh, look, we got three. Oh, look at that. My mom has Mars in Cancer, so she might as well have a moon in Aries. Having Mars in Cancer is similar to having a moon in Aries, okay? Right? It's funny, right? Mars rules Aries, and if you put Mars in the sign of Cancer, which is the moon, it's similar to having the moon in the sign of Aries, in the sign of Mars, right? It's very, very similar. People have Mars in Cancer, or Moon in Aries. So, yeah, so one of the things I think it's really important for us to consider is, with this full moon is, channeling this Aries energy into something constructive and something positive, channeling it into something that you're passionate about. If you really need to go to war or fight for yourself or assert yourself in the space of a connection or relationship, it's very, very important. I think one of the big things we're going to be seeing this week is a lot of people really claiming their independence and being like, you know what, I don't need you anymore. I don't this, the fighting and arguing all the time, this isn't working anymore. Let me just cut the cord. Let's just move on. I'm done talking about this. It seems like the struggle is not getting us anywhere, things like that, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of people feeling very assertive, very courageous, very, very autonomous this week, with our full moon in Aries kicking off the week. And I think a lot of people are, really asking themselves what they're passionate about. What do you wake up in the morning for? And I think that's one of the things that, when we're talking about Mars and the sign of Aries, we're talking about what drives us. What are we passionate about? What inspires us? What motivates you? What drive like, and I think this is one of the things why the reason this is one of the reasons why Mars, the planet that rules Aries, is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, which is about goals and dreams and ambitions, right? Because when Mars has a task, when you give Mars a task, when he has something to do, he will go ahead and accomplish that goal, that vision, that dream. This is why Mars is exalted in Capricorn, because Mars, right, being exalted in a sign ruled by Saturn, Mars needs discipline. Mars needs structure, right? Fire, if we think about fire, right? What do we do with fire? We have fire pits. We have chimneys, right? We always have to contain fire so it's not destructive and chaotic and it doesn't destroy everything. So when we're thinking about Mars's exaltation in Capricorn, we're thinking about, right, the need to have structure and discipline for Mars, the need for Mars to channel his energy and for us to be able to contain Mars's energy and focus it in a way to where we get good outcomes and to where we get, we're able to manifest our desires, manifest our goals, or we're able to achieve them with concentrated, focused effort. And I think that's one of the things we want to, remind ourselves of when it comes to this full moon in Aries is like, what is your relationship with Mars? Do you have a weak relationship with Mars? Is your Mars a little too hot and spicy and it's causing like destructiveness and right? Or is your Mars kind of like chaotic and scattered where you don't really channel your energy consistently in any particular direction? Are you disconnected from your goals? Are you disconnected from your passions? Are you disconnected from your desires, right? And in what way maybe do you need to reclaim your desires and your passions? What way do you need to kind of maybe investigate Mercury, Mars, and Scorpio, investigate, okay, yourself and go deeper within yourself so that you can really get into alignment with your goals and your dreams and your like, your passions, and then you can give Mars something to do, right? Mars needs something to do. And I also think this is why, the military is a very Mars place because, what is the military? Mars, right? The military is ruled by Mars, is the Aries thing. It's also kind of a Capricornian thing because of the hierarchy. But all these soldiers, what do? You give them instruction, right? All these soldiers, they're given instruction, and then all they're taught to do is just carry out the task without asking questions, right? And then they're just here to follow orders. And I think that's one of the things that can be sometimes a pitfall of Mars energy and Martian people is they can follow orders blindly, or they can also not question authority because they want that structure, they want that routine, or even they want that approval, right? I think that one of the things that's so interesting about Aries, the sign of Aries, is if you put it on the rising, you know, you have an 11th house and a 10th house ruled by Saturn. And so one of the things about Aries people and Aries energies, they tend to get a lot of ostracization, or they tend to feel very lonely or very disconnected, or they tend to find it really hard sometimes to find their place in the world, right? But they also feel very driven and very called to being ambitious and doing something great because of the Saturn rulership of their 10th and 11th houses, if you put Aries on the rising, right? So, but there's also this kind of karmic obligation in this karmic relationship that they have with authority, which is the 10th house Capricorn, right? From the sign of Aries, and also what they have with groups of people, social groups of people, Aquarius in the 11th house and stuff. So it's just, food for thought, something to think about when we're talking about the sign of Aries and this full moon in Aries. What is kind of like our goal and our dream? What is our vision? And what do we wake up in the morning every day for? What are we passionate about? What are we inspired about? Also, what sometimes, it's about what do we have to protect? What do we have to defend? What do we have to fight for, right? I think these are all the questions that we want to be asking ourselves during this full moon and Aries cycle is like, what am I passionate about? What am I fighting for? What do I have to defend or protect? Okay. What am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to build? And do I have a healthy, like I said, do I have a healthy relationship with my Mars, right? Am I in right relationship with Mars to where, I am inspired and passionate and I'm focused with my Mars? Or do I have a weak, disconnected relationship with my Mars, right? Do I feel tired all the time? And do I have no direction or no passion? Do I feel disconnected from my body? That's another thing that we want to remember about Aries and the sign of Mars. Aries is a very physical sign. In my opinion, I think it's the most physical sign, right? It's very much connected to the body. It's very much athletic. It's working out. It's building muscle mass. It's really, really building. It has a strong relationship with the body. And when we have a weak relationship with Mars, we will tend to have a very weak relationship with our health and with our body as well. A lot of people that have a very weak relationship with Mars, they're struggling with diabetes, right? Because opposite of Aries, if you have no Aries, no Mars energy, guess what? Libra. You're gonna have diabetes. You're gonna have low blood pressure. You're gonna be cold all the time. You're gonna like be lazy. Libra. Libra's lazy, right? Aries is not a lazy sign. It's not a lazy energy. Where Libra is the sign, in my opinion, is the sign of laziness. It's the sign of like inaction, right? Compromise, not doing anything, or just waiting for others to do it, right? It's Libra. This is why the Sun and the Mars are in their, fall and detriment in the sign of Libra. So, when we're talking about Aries energy and building a strong relationship with Mars, we've got to be really connected to our body. We got to create heat in the body. We got to be passionate. We got to build muscle. We got to be, that kind of resilience of Mars and Aries and stuff like that. And also, when you have a good relationship with your Mars, you're not going to be dealing with health issues as much, right? Scorpio is also, right? Mars also rules over Scorpio, and Scorpio's eighth house energy. And so, people, when they have a good relationship with their body and their health, they tend to recover from illness and sickness and injury a lot quicker, right? Because of Scorpio in the eighth house, right? Mars is also a very regenerative energy. People don't think about this about Mars, but because Mars, the ruler of Scorpio, right? Mars actually gives us the ability to come back from illness, to come back from sickness, or even to come back from near-death experiences. And this is why Mars is hard to kill, and there's a lot of predators that, Mars also rules over when it comes to the animal kingdom. Mars rules over predators, right? Wolves and, eagles and hawks and, sharks. These are all Mars creatures. You know what I mean? Anything with fangs and teeth, these are all ruled by Mars. And a lot of predators, listen, they're hard to kill off. It takes a lot to take out a predator. You know what I mean? Because there's this resilience and this tenacity for life, right? That Mars and Aries energy has, which I really love. I'm a Scorpio stellium and I have Jupiter in Aries, so Also, one of the things I always tell people, don't compete with Mars people. Just don't, all right? Because you want to get into competition with the Aries Scorpio, you are not gonna win. These signs are very, very competitive, Scorpio is a little bit more secretively, silently competitive, but deep down inside they are, where Aries is a little bit more overtly competitive. This is one of the things I was talking about on the full moon in Aries live. But unless you want to lose. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So, but yeah, these signs are very competitive. All right, so Mercury's now in the sign of Scorpio. Like I was saying, Mercury's going to be in Scorpio from today until October 29th. And with Mercury in Scorpio, Mercury, the planet of communication, the planet of mind, in Scorpio, the sign of, hidden things, of hidden motives, the sign of the occult, the sign of deception, the sign of betrayal, the sign of also politics. Scorpio is a sign that is very connected to politics. That's one of the things you'll notice if you start looking at the charts of politicians, is that many of them, many, many, many of them have Scorpio placements, have key Scorpio placements, especially politicians that are very, very successful. Many of them have a Scorpio placement. And then there's other politicians that happen to be a Leo rising who were born on an eclipse in Sagittarius, on a blood moon eclipse in Sagittarius, with the North Node and the Sun together in Gemini and the South Node and the Moon together in Sagittarius. There's some politicians that are walking, talking chaos. I'm not going to name anybody, but for those of you that know that chart, you guys probably know who I'm talking about, Mr. Trump himself. But yeah, with Mercury and Scorpio, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Mercury and Scorpio does to Mr. Trump, because I don't think he has a good relationship with Mercury, with water sign energy as well. I think he has, yeah, he's a Leo rising, so he has Scorpio in the fourth house. So we'll see what that Mars and Mercury digs up from his past. But Mercury and Scorpio is going to have us kind of thinking about the deeper hidden motive. Mercury and Scorpio conjoined with Mars, with their same with transiting with Mars, is also going to be digging up, secrets. It's going to be digging up hidden things. We may feel that we're not as trustworthy with Mercury and Scorpio, or we're not as trusting. We're a little suspicious collectively with Mercury and Scorpio, transiting there over the next few weeks. So I think one of the big things that we want to consider with Mercury and Scorpio over the next 3 weeks, especially if you're like a fixed sign. So if you're a Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, or a Leo, Mercury is going to be coming into a conjunction with your placements. If you're a Scorpio, it's going to be opposing you if you're a Taurus, and it's going to be making squares to you, the Mercury transit in Scorpio, if you're Aquarius or Leo. You just kind of want to watch, what that Mercury and Scorpio is going to be about, or what's going to bring in. I actually think that the Mercury and Scorpio transit is going to be pretty positive towards the end of it. The reason being is because Mercury is going to come into this beautiful grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn by the end of his transit in the sign of Scorpio. So the first week of Scorpio season, as the sun enters Scorpio, what happens is yeah, that week of like October 20th to the 27th, I'm looking at it right now. It's actually right around our new moon in Libra. I think we're going to have a 29 degree, 28, 29-degree new moon in Libra. Let me double check though. I think it's on the 21st. Da-da-da-dun-dun-dun-dun. Yeah, we have a 28-degree new moon in Libra. Yeah, 28-degree new moon in Libra. That's going to be on the 21st of October. But around that time, that week of the new moon, we have this beautiful grand trine. We have Mercury and Mars. They're going to be, I'm looking at October 21st on that new moon. Venus is in her rulership in Libra, which we love. Mercury and Mars are going to be together, conjoined at 20 degrees of Scorpio, and they're also going to be forming a trine with Saturn and Jupiter. So one of the things I really like about the beginning, the astrology of the beginning of a Scorpio season, coming out of that new moon in Libra, I like this beautiful grand trine that Mercury and Mars are going to be making to Jupiter and Saturn. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of commitments. We're going to be seeing a lot of new jobs and new opportunities. We're going to be seeing a lot of people, more marriages, more proposals, but we also may see some people passing away. It is Mercury and Mars in Scorpio, right? With Saturn, that Saturn Jupiter trine. I don't know. We've been seeing, elderly people pass away and stuff like this. I also think one of the things I was thinking about is how Saturn and Jupiter are like in this. They're coming into this trine. And I was thinking about the peace agreements that are happening with Gaza right now, with like Trump kind of facilitating this peace agreement between Palestine and Hamas and Israel. And I'm really thinking that, that's because of the Jupiter Saturn trine. Jupiter is a planet of, forgiveness and compassion, and Jupiter has a lot to do with good, all things good. Jupiter has a lot to do with beliefs and morals and ethics. And, Saturn has a lot to do with contracts, with boundaries, with rules, with limitations. And Saturn has a lot to do with government. So I'm just thinking of the Saturn Jupiter trine that's, forming in the sky. We're going to really, I think we see it go exact or becomes pretty close in November, I believe. Let me just double check here. Um, yeah, in November. Yeah, I'm looking at November 4th. Saturn's at 25 and Jupiter's at 25. And then they're forming this grand trine with well, by then Mercury's in Sag, but Mars is at 29 degrees. I'm looking at November 4th, Mars is at 29 degrees Scorpio. So one of the things I think that, is going to be really nice about, Scorpio season, is going to be with that Saturn Jupiter trine is kind of like peace agreements or like good outcomes, good opportunities, new contracts. Saturn and Jupiter are working and are they're in a good relationship with each other. So, I think we're seeing governments kind of maybe lay off some of the tension and some of the pressure and some of the anger and some of the fighting. We may see some more peace type of stuff, especially Venus and Libra. I mean, Venus is going to be in Libra. So I'm seeing more like peacekeeping type of stuff, but we have to kind of hang in there because even though we have that beautiful trine forming in the sky, we're still in the midst of very, very volatile um, energy. And, we're still we have this full moon in Aries, 2 week cycle before our new moon in Libra. And I think the astrology gets better though. What I will say, I think the astrology gets better after this 2 weeks. I think the astrology is easier going into Scorpio season. If it gets a little bit more gets a little bit more restful and stuff like this, or it's more peaceful is what I would say. It's more grounded, it's more peaceful. But this full moon in Aries energy, the next 2 weeks, I think is going to be a little volatile. I think it's going to be a little challenging, especially because we're going to have Mercury, Mars coming into a conjunction together. I don't think it's this week. I don't think it's this week, but we'll talk about it next week. Mercury, Mars conjunct, because when Mercury and Mars are close together like that, um, Mercury and Mars tend to cause inflammation and they tend to cause fights and arguments when they're together like that. And yeah, moments of betrayal, deception, or even people going on the attack. Yeah, Mercury and Mars are going to come into conjunction on Sunday the 19th, going to the 20th. Okay, so right before our new moon in Libra. All right, let's talk. Well, let's talk about the astrology of the week. It's 10:30. We're 30 minutes in. I've just been kind of rambling about the full moon and and stuff. But let's talk about us, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about Mercury square Pluto today. Wow. So we do have a Mercury Pluto square. So there could be some like secret information dropping today that is like shocking for all of us, or even going into the next few days, is Mercury separating from that square with Pluto. But we do have Mercury square Pluto today, going into tomorrow, and I want you guys to be very mindful of not only is Mercury has Mercury ingressed into Scorpio, but he's also squaring Pluto. So there's an opportunity for us to get to the bottom of a motive, to kind of pull information from the unknown and get some clarity around something that we've been maybe confused or asking about. This is an opportunity to also kind of shift our perspective and open up our mind a little bit and go a little bit deeper when it comes to our relationship with, our intellect and stuff like that. Mercury square Pluto could also be your decision change. You change your mind about something. You thought, oh my gosh, was seeing this, or I was deciding to do this, or I was gonna do that, but now I got this new piece of information, or now I had this revelation or this epiphany, or a conversation that I have was so pivotal, right? And now I'm changing my mind or something. So I just want you guys to be very aware of this Mercury square Pluto aspect in the sky. It is between, Aquarius and Scorpio, and so this can be about drama with friends, or you get some secret hidden information about friends or something like this, or, groups of people, you feel, your friends are gossiping about you, or there's some group of people gossiping about you or something like this, that's how different ways, those are just some examples of the way that this Mercury square Pluto could show up. Can you guys hear me still? Are we there? Are we still here? Let me wave at people. Can you guys hear me? Stand across the street. Oh, are we good? I see hearts. Someone was Okay, someone was calling me, so I just wanted to make sure the audio didn't tune out. So yeah, so Mercury square Pluto today. Also, if you have anything around the beginning degrees of Mercury square Pluto, I want you to be of a fixed sign, Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, Leo. I want you to be very aware of this Mercury square Pluto, okay? Also, I do think that what's going to be really interesting is what's going to happen with jobs this week and next week. I do feel like, there's like a mixed bag of people, changing jobs, getting jobs, leaving jobs. We're still seeing kind of like layoffs though. I was looking at the full moon and Aries chart when we did the overview on Saturday, and I was looking at the South Node and Venus in the sixth house away from the full moon. And that was kind of giving kind of like karmic experiences with working jobs and stuff. One of the things we do like though, we do like that Mercury is I don't know. I don't really know about that. I don't. I mean, one of the things. Okay, one of the things I do like. I'm just gonna say it. One of the things I do like is Mercury in the same Mercury and Scorpio with Mars. I like that because to me that's like passion, that's drive, that's like opportunity, that's like there's something where we're feeling more assertive or more courageous. We want to like go out there and get something, especially those of us that are like for those of you that are like seeking jobs and things like that. But also, I want you guys to think about, with Mercury and Scorpio, there could be some weird, funky stuff that comes up at the workplace. Mercury and Scorpio tends to stir up the drama and tends to stir up like kind of competition or tend to stir up jealousy and stuff like that. If you are feeling that or seeing that at the workplace or just in general, you're experiencing like that, a strange energy with someone, please listen to your intuition, okay? Please trust what your gut is telling you with Mercury transiting Scorpio over the next 3 weeks until the 29th of October. Like, listen to your gut instinct, listen to your intuition, okay? But that Mercury square Pluto, okay? That Mercury square Pluto today can be a little dramatic, all right? Can be a little dramatic. Also, so we have our full moon in Aries. That's going to be tonight. Let's see. Hold on. Let me get you guys the exact time. It is going to be, I think it's like 11:48 p.m. Eastern time. So it's going to be around midnight Eastern time if you're on the East Coast, and then it's going to be around 9 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be the full moon's going to be at max capacity around then. So you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see the full moon. It'll look really nice. Go out there and take a look at it, tonight if you can. All right. Um, all right. So let me see. Hold on. Let me go back here. Let me go ahead and put this in my time zone. All right, let's kind of jump into, let's see, let's see if there's anything else that's important this week that I want to cover in the overview. With the sun in Libra. Let's see, do we have any retrogrades or anything like that? Da 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 da. I'm just going through and seeing if there's any. Good morning. How are you? Welcome. Thank you for being here. Good morning. Good morning. Mercury and Scorpio. Mm-mm. Friday. Venus is going pretty quick. So one of the big aspects this week is going to be Venus opposite Saturn, which is going to be on Friday. So that's going to be a karmic checkpoint for relationships and partnerships and things like this. Yeah, Mercury's going to go retrograde in Sagittarius in the beginning of November. That's one of the things I was talking about in the beginning of the live. Yeah, I'm just looking to see if there's any planetary shifts this week that no, Venus goes into Libra next week. So the only planetary shift that we have this week is Mercury going to Scorpio. Yes, Venus is going to be at 28 degrees Virgo on Sunday. So I do believe on Monday, the 13th, she goes into Libra, where she's going to be in her rulership, and that's going to be really nice. As she separates from Saturn and opposes Neptune immediately as she moves into Libra. So, yeah, Monday the 13th, Venus in Libra. All right, let's get back to the week. Let's talk about the week. All right, so we start off this week with our full moon in Aries, which we've been discussing over the last like 30 minutes. Um, and right away, the moon is going to hit a conjunction with Chiron and Aries later on tomorrow, coming out of our full moon. The moon hits a conjunction with Chiron. So the full moon is going to be at 14 degrees, which is a Taurus degree. So one of the things that we're talking about with the full moon being at a Taurus degree, we're talking about resources, we're talking about asserting our worth, values, food, our digestive system, our stomach, you know, those things are going to be highlighted in some type of way, you know? So watch out for any kind of like stomach irritation with this full moon. Watch out for eating excessively hot or spicy foods. Do not irritate your stomach, or our stomach's gonna be feeling a little bit more sensitive, okay, with the full moon in Aries, especially sensitive to like heat or spicy food or hot food. So, just be mindful, my loves. Be mindful. Okay, mindfulness is the best protection. Alrighty. Um, all right, so then let's take a look. Full moon today. And then on Tuesday, the moon is continuing. So we have the moon in Aries Monday, Tuesday, and then I believe going into Wednesday. The Mercury Pluto square goes exact tomorrow, but that Mercury Pluto square is going to be lingering in the sky. We're going to be feeling that energy. Okay. The moon is going to square Jupiter tomorrow on Tuesday as he conjoins Chiron and Aries. So with Moon in Aries squaring Jupiter in Cancer tomorrow, it's going to happen around 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. Then the moon moves on and hits a conjunction with Chiron. We want to be very aware of kind of arguing and being emotionally triggered by people who disagree with our beliefs or our opinions or our judgments. Okay, the moon square Jupiter could also be about planning a vacation, going on vacation, traveling, getting back into school, or receiving some kind of information that is beneficial or something. Having a consultation with a doctor or a lawyer, that could be moon square Jupiter as well. A lot of different ways of that moon square Jupiter, but in general, Our emotions, moon, are going to be feeling irritated, Aries, and triggered, Chiron, and there could be an amplification of emotional experience because of the moon square Jupiter, okay? Also, moon square Jupiter could also bring a moment of like peacekeeping or a moment of like forgiveness or a moment of reconciliation, okay, with moon square Jupiter tomorrow. That's going to be on Tuesday, October 7th, around 10:30 a.m. All right, we have moon square Jupiter. But the moon's going to hit a conjunction with Chiron, okay? So, what I will say is like we may be feeling a little sensitive, a little triggered tomorrow. There may be an illumination of woundedness in some type of way, what hurts. Also Moon Chiron conjunction, Moon square Jupiter. If there's pain or woundedness around the family, around the mother, around the past, around shit that you've been holding on to, baby, it's time to let that go. It's a full moon in Aries, ruled by Mars and Scorpio. We need to transmute the pain, transmute the resentment, transmute the betrayal, transmute the energy, the emotional energy that we've invested in the past. We need to turn it into something good. We need to turn it into something new, or we just need to free ourselves from it and let it go. Okay. Be mindful of this tomorrow with the moon hitting a conjunction in Aries tomorrow. Okay. It's going to be very, very sensitive. Oh, it's my deceased brother's B-day, and I'll watch this when it's posted. Beautiful day. Oh, I'm sorry about that, my love. Sending you healing. We're gonna be feeling sensitive, okay? We're gonna be feeling sensitive, especially tomorrow with the moon hitting in conjunction with Chiron and Aries. Also, Mercury just wrapped up in Libra, but Mercury was opposing Chiron all last week. Who had a conversation last week with that Mercury Chiron opposition? Who had a very healing conversation about like maybe like disempowerment or about like, finding more peace and harmony or what needs to change in a relationship or even, asserting the self, being like, you know what, I need to be on myself by myself, or I need to like assert myself, or I need to like, claim my power in some type of way. We had that Mercury and Libra opposing Chiron and Aries last week. And so I think, that kind of opened up a door for kind of conversations around what hurts and around, what we want in our relationships and around like, where we're experiencing some kind of disempowerment or unfairness or injustice in our life and we're feeling like we need to act on it or do something about it. That was like last week. Well, I think, the moon in Aries with, hitting Chiron tomorrow is gonna maybe trigger that conversation or trigger, some of those conversations or some of those thoughts or some of those emotions or those feelings from last week. So I want you guys to be mindful of that tomorrow, okay? With the moon hitting that conjunction with Aries, but also squaring Jupiter. And then let's keep going. That's Tuesday. I'm looking at aspects here. So one of the really cool things that we actually have building in the sky this week, which I actually think perfects on Wednesday. Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. It perfects on Wednesday, right as the moon goes into Taurus. One of the things I really like is Jupiter and Venus coming into a sextile. They're going to come into a sextile at 23 degrees. Jupiter's at 23 Cancer, Venus is at 23 Virgo. And I really like this like aspect of the sextile that they build that they perfect on Wednesday. And then it kind of lingers over the next few days as Venus separates from that sextile with Jupiter. Yeah, Thursday she moves to 24. But I really like this like Venus Jupiter sextile. To me, that's giving kind of like compassion and forgiveness in relationships. Venus and Virgo is like, what can I do for you? How can I serve you? How can we fix it? Venus and Virgo, South Node of Virgo. How can we fix it? What old patterns, what old karmic patterns do we need to free ourselves from in this connection, in this relationship? What's no longer working for us anymore? Like, I can't I have to stop being so judgmental or stop holding so much expectations of you or, things aren't always going to be perfect, Venus and Virgo, right? And then Jupiter and Cancer, like, that Jupiter sextile Venus, it's like, well, the kids and the family, and we've invested so much emotion in this, and we've invested so much time in this, and we don't want to just let it go. We have a house together, and we have kids together, and we have that's the Jupiter in Cancer, right? So I think that Jupiter sextile Venus is kind of presenting us an opportunity to really find this kind of expansion and growth in our relationships, to kind of like find compassion and forgiveness, and to kind of like fix things. You know what I mean? Like, let's repair it, let's fix it, let's see if it's salvageable in some type of way, okay? I think it's important for us to be mindful of this Venus sextile Jupiter on Wednesday, because then by the end of the week, Venus goes to the last degrees of Virgo and she opposes Saturn, which presents us a possibility for renewal of commitment. So I'm looking at Saturday, October 11th. I'm looking at Yeah, I'm looking at like Saturday morning actually. It's like Saturday morning, Friday evening going to Saturday morning. We have this Venus Saturn opposition that forms in the sky that goes, it perfects, it goes exact on Saturday around like 3 in the morning, it looks like. That's funny. Venus goes to 27 and then Saturn goes to 26. Saturn's at 27 and Venus is at 26, and then they both go to the next degree at the same time. But yeah, it perfects around then. That Venus Saturn opposition is going to be a reality check and a wake up call for a lot of people when it comes to their relationships. It's also going to be a moment of like commitment, a moment of like make or break it for people, possibly. It could also be a moment of like boundaries. Saturn is about what? Rules, restriction, boundaries. Saturn is our expectations, right? Lowered expectations. That's all Saturn. But Saturn is our expectations when it comes to our relationships, right? Or the rules of engagement when it comes to our, Saturn opposite Venus on Saturday, going Saturday morning. Our relationships, Saturn opposite Venus, right? These are the rules. These are my expectations. These are my boundaries. If you want to keep me, if you want to have me, I need the ring, I need the commitment, I need the promise, I need the corrective action. I need you to be showing me, right? I need you to be showing, not just telling me, okay? I need you to be showing me and doing the things, right? That prove that you want to make this work or that you want to fix it, right? But I will say that Saturn opposite Venus can be a moment of rejection. It could be a moment of denial. It could be a moment of, you know what, this is not working. I don't want this anymore. It could be a moment of separation or endings with Saturn opposite Venus. So also, be mindful of illness and sickness. It's still in the air this week with this full moon cycle. Full moon in Aries with the south node and the north node on the sixth house, 12th house axis. People are getting sick. Venus in the sixth house. People are getting sick. People are getting ill. So, be mindful of your health. Be mindful of your immune system this week, next week, okay, during the full moon cycle, this full moon and Aries cycle. All right. But yeah, so Saturn opposite Venus. That could also be about getting sick. Saturn and Virgo or Saturn and Pisces opposite Venus and Virgo. But yeah, I just want you guys, there may be a reality check or a wake up call. You may wake up Saturday morning with that Saturn Venus opposition and be like, you know what? We got to talk about this. We got to talk about, the money in our relationship. We got to talk about trust in our relationship. We got to talk about, where we're going, what we're doing. We got to talk about, what I'm not getting. Or we got to talk about the overstep boundaries or the codependency. I don't know. There could be something like that, that kind of, that Saturn Venus opposition, might trigger or might activate something. And then the moon's going to be in Gemini on Saturday. So we're talking, we're traveling. It's really interesting actually how every weekend we've had mutable moons. I don't know if you guys noticed that. This past weekend we had the moon in Pisces. This upcoming weekend we're going to have the moon in Gemini. The weekend prior to that, I think we had the moon in Sagittarius. The weekend prior to that was our solar eclipse in Virgo. We've had the moon in mutable signs over every weekend. And what it's been doing is it's been making these weekends kind of fun or kind of playful or kind of messy. These mutable moons over the weekends, So, with and I'll get to Saturday. I'll talk about the moon in Gemini, but yeah, it's just so interesting how we've had these mutable moons. But the moon's going to be in Gemini as that Venus and Saturn opposition perfects on Saturday morning. So there's definitely conversation, there's movement. We're feeling very stimulated. We're feeling like we gotta, our throat chakra is definitely feeling a little activated over the weekend with the moon in Gemini. All right, but let's talk. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let me go back here. Hold on. Someone said, "Happy Monday, y'all. Good, because I need detachment after the week." I told my baby daddy to go to the army. He's at MEPS as we speak. It's funny. Okay. So, I was talking about, okay, yeah. So I was on Tuesday evening going into Monday morning. So, or Wednesday morning, October 8th, okay? So, October 8th, Wednesday, the moon goes into her exalted state, which we love. She's going to be in Taurus Wednesday morning. I'm looking at 4:30 a.m. Wednesday morning. Let me actually put this into like cohesive hours. Sorry, I'm just getting some boogies out of my eyes. Hold on here, 30 minutes. There we go. Right here. Okay, 6 a.m. Monday morning or Wednesday morning, October 8th. The moon's in Taurus at 4 degrees, directly opposite Mercury, which we like. We like exalted moon in Taurus, directly opposite Mercury, Wednesday morning. This can be some good news, a good conversation, a letter in the mail that comes in that's important. This could be an interview. This could be a phone call. This could be something very positive that we get as the moon ingresses into Taurus and then opposes Mercury in Scorpio, okay? But we can also feel pulled between our emotions and then like our daily tasks and our mind and what's going on in like, or even our family. The moon in Taurus is like our family, our emotions, our home life. And Mercury is like our job, our routine, our day-to-day, something like that. So there could be some tension on Wednesday with that moon opposite Mercury that we want to be mindful of. Um, yeah, with that opposition. But I don't know. I'm getting kind of getting like this is like a good transit. I like the moon opposite Mercury. I think it's like positive. But then what happens as the moon continues to progress into the day, the moon hits an opposition with Mars around 3 p.m. Pacific time. It starts to build around noon, but we're gonna feel it. It goes exact, yeah, it goes exact around like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday. The moon opposite Mars, okay? And that can be a moment of frustration. That can bring irritability or anger. That could also be a moment of like passion or assertiveness. That could also be a moment of like you put your foot down and you're like, no, this is what it's gonna be, right? Or someone else puts their foot down with you, right? This Mars is ruling over a full moon and Aries cycle, right? Then we have this Mercury Mars opposition. So I do think Wednesday could be a very pivotal, a very important day for folks, not only because the moon is going to be opposing Mercury in the beginning of the day, but also because the moon is going to hit this opposition with Mars around 4 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, October 8th. And that moon Mars opposition seems very, very active. It seems very, very triggering. It seems very, very motivating or inspiring, or it feels like it's pushing something. It's like triggering a narrative or something. Obviously, not everyone's going to experience this, but collectively, we're going to feel that Moon Mars opposition energy. This could also be a moment of violence or a moment of war or a moment of anger that we see like in the media or something like this. So be mindful of Wednesday around 3, 4 p.m. Okay, that day. No driving fast if if you commute from work on around that time. No driving fast. Moon opposite Mars can also be about moments where we're just going too fast and we run a red light, right? Running a red light is a Mars thing, right? Red lights are, think about the color red is ruled by Mars. When you run a red light, you're like, fuck it, and you go through it. That's like a Mars thing. No running red lights when the moon's opposite Mars on Wednesday evening, okay? Because you can deal with some dire consequences with that moon Mars opposition, all right? But there's definitely a activating, triggering energy in the air, it feels like, with that moon opposite Mars on Wednesday. Okay, then let's keep going. So then, If you guys have any questions too, if anyone wants to ask me questions, feel free to ask questions. Okay, so now I'm looking at Thursday, October 9th. Trying to see if I'm missing any. We have Saturn and Venus building up into the opposition. Mars is at 11. Mercury's at 14. We have, what's the sun doing? The sun isn't really aspecting Jupiter quite yet. So next week we're going to have a sun square Jupiter, but we're not really having that quite yet. So that's going to be an important transit, I think. Okay, so yeah, so Thursday morning, I'm looking at 10 a.m. Thursday morning. We have Moon trine Venus, Moon sextile Saturn. The moon is actually really well supported on the moon is also sextile Jupiter. So the moon is forming these beautiful aspects to Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn on Thursday around 10 a.m. So this could be a really good conversation that you have with the boss. This could also be, a job opportunity that comes in. This could also be a moment of reconciliation or healing when it comes to a friend or a partnership. This could also be about new connections coming in. A lot of people have been meeting a lot of new people with the Venus South Node thing. There's been a lot of karmic connections coming in for people. What I mean by karmic is not negative, okay? What I mean by karmic is it's like fated. It's like you have to meet this person. Like this person has something for you. This person is part of your, the development of your narrative, the development of your story. Okay, so I want to talk about this really quick, okay? And then we'll keep going with the astrology of the week ahead because I think this is a good little tangent and I want to talk about this. You don't meet anybody without reason. Everyone that you meet is part of a divine plan, okay? I firmly and truthfully believe this, and so does Madonna, okay? But I believe this long before Madonna did, okay? Before I saw her interview with Jay Shetty, which is really good. I think you guys should go watch it. So, many times when we are experiencing drama and crisis and pain and woundedness in a connection or in a relationship, right? We, instead of taking a step back and objectively, you know, analyzing the experience and the situation, we tend to get ourselves all wrapped up and all involved and all emotionally invested, and we get all hurt and we get all wounded, and we miss the lesson. We miss the lesson because, right? They enter our life and they come into our life to reveal things about ourselves, to show us some certain things and to help us clear out certain karmic patterns in the way that we relate to others. This doesn't just have to be about love. This is also about friendships. This is also about family members. This is also about your siblings. This is about neighbors. Sometimes it's even a stranger enters your life and you have a weird situation or circumstance with a stranger in a moment in a day that's here to teach you something very, very profound. And what I think is so important, okay, is like we have to detach from the experience of the crisis and the drama and the messiness and the pain and the woundedness of our relationships so that we can take a step back and learn what they're here to teach us. You know what I mean? We have to be able to be like, okay, what was this situation? What was that person? What was that betrayal? What was that heartbreak? What was that meant to teach me? What was that meant to show me about myself, about my own patterns, about my choices, right? And a lot of times, what happens when we are so focused outwardly on our relationships and we're blaming everyone externally for the things that we experience within them, right? We are not able to change. We're not able to take accountability and responsibility for the part that we played in manifesting the situation, right? For instance, we constantly are pursuing, let's just an example. We're constantly pursuing people that are emotionally unavailable, that are depressed, or that are already in a relationship or married in some type of way. So the question we should ask ourselves is like, what is my pattern? Why do I keep falling in love with people that are unattainable, that don't want me, that are already committed, that are depressed or heavy? And what is that trying to show me about me? What is this pattern trying to show me? After the second or third time, you really got to ask yourself and really look deeply within yourself and be like, wait a minute. This cannot be about them. This has to be about me. There's a choice that I'm conscious or unconsciously making. There's a pattern that I'm reliving. There's these pitfalls that I keep falling into where I keep experiencing the same ish in my connections. Well, baby, you gotta look at yourself at some point. You gotta ask yourself and you gotta deeply look within because it cannot always be everyone else's fault. Because if you're not able to learn the lesson, if you're not able to take a step back and be like, wait a minute, what part am I playing? You're going to keep making the same mistakes. You're going to keep falling into the same kind of relationship patterns, and nothing is going to change. And it's going to get worse. That's the other thing. You don't learn the first time. Well, guess what? The lesson comes back around harder the second, third, fourth time. It gets harder and harder every time. That's how the universe works. That's how spirit works. That's how the grand design is, right? So I think what's super important with, the Venus South Node thing that we got going on, that we've had going on, instead of like, being like, well, they did this and what's wrong with them and criticizing them and blaming them and blah blah blah. How about we actually be like, wait a minute, no, what is the mirror here? What is this person reflecting within me? What is this person meant to show me? What is this connection? What was this situation? What was this relationship meant to reveal within me so that I can heal, so that I can break the pattern, so that I can become better? Okay? We got to ask ourselves this question. We got to do it habitually because so many times we get caught up in the crisis and the drama and the tragedy and the heartbreak that we miss the lesson. And if we miss the lesson and don't see it, we're bound to repeat the mistake. We're bound to. Does that make sense? Let me go ahead and read what some of y'all have done and written. Louis, the other day I was getting my shit done and met this girl. We exchanged numbers. A week later, the girl I was talking to walked into my job and introduced herself as a new employee. I was getting my hair done and I clicked with the girl and we exchanged numbers. The next week, she walked to my job and she's a new employee. Yeah, you see how that works? That's so funny. Yes, someone said yes. Literally had this conversation an hour ago with my energetic healer because I ended a friendship today over a crazy incident last night. We reviewed what lesson needed to be learned from them. Yes, I love that for you. Yeah. So yeah, we have to be able to detach from the drama and the crisis of the situation. And we got to be able to not take it. And this is the other thing. You can't take it personal. Okay, this is another lesson. Listen, the majority of shit that people do to you, that people put you through, guess what? They've done it to someone else. Okay, they've done it to themselves, and it absolutely has nothing to do with you. Nothing to do with you. They have a pattern of doing that to other people. And once you could take a step back and take a look and really analyze someone's history and the way that they deal with their relationships, you'll notice the pattern. Because when you start taking things personal, you know what you're doing? You're getting your ego involved. The ego wants to believe that everything is personal. The ego wants to believe that everything is about me. And we see this with kids when they're young, right? When kids are developing their ego, they blame themselves for everything, even though things that are happening or things that are, they're experiencing around them have nothing to do with them. And many kids, they grow up with complexes, okay? Because they believe that something was their fault in childhood that had absolutely nothing to do with them, right? And kids do this all the time. They turn because of the ego, because this is the deception of the ego. Oh yeah, my parents got divorced because I was a bad kid. I was a bad child. Oh yeah, my parents got divorced or they're arguing or whatever because of something I said, because of something I did. Right? Oh yeah, my mom stepped out of the relationship because kids will find a way to blame themselves for things that have absolutely nothing to do with them. And we still do this as adults. Many of us, we will take on responsibility for something, we'll blame ourselves for something, we'll take something personal because someone said this or someone did this or someone attacked us or whatever. And it has absolutely nothing to do with us. Okay? Especially, it's like, especially when you are someone that is like loving and kind and you're an empath and you're sensitive and you care for people. Sometimes it's the very nature of your light and your goodness that trigger people's shadows. Sometimes it's just you being you that reveals inauthenticity, that reveals vileness and evil, or that reveals ugliness in the spirit and the hearts of others. And you cannot blame her. You cannot take you're disturbing people's demons because you walking around as a light. That has nothing to do with you, right? I've experienced that many times in the workplace where I literally just had people hate me and dislike me because I'm the best, I'm number one, I'm successful. I got people waiting for me for 2 hours. This is when I used to work in banking. I would have haters because people do not want to see you. They want to wait 2 hours to see Louis. Because why? Louis cares. Louis great at his job. Louis will find a solution to be able to fix your financial problems. Where you, on the other hand, don't give a shit about people. You're just here to get a paycheck. You don't even care. And now you have the audacity to be envious and jealous of me and talk crap about me because I love my job, because I shine, because I want to help people, because I care about what I do, because I care about people. Nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with me. Absolutely has nothing to do with me. Okay. And us empaths, we are so quick to blame ourselves and to take it and to be like, oh my God, so we shrink our light, we stop working as hard, you know what I mean? No, 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 no. You don't take it personal. Because if you don't take things personal, let me tell you what happens. You're able to detach from the experience, you're able to learn the lesson, and you're actually able to give yourself more grace. You're able to give the other person more grace. You're able to navigate the situation, especially if it's a situation of anger or fighting. You're able to navigate it with peace and love instead of getting triggered and getting your ego involved, and then also all of a sudden you want to get participate in the drama and create. It's not even worth it. The beauty and the gift of being able to detach ego wise and not take things personal in these situations like this is you get to maintain your calm and your peace and your perspective. You get That's the reward. That's the gift. That's the blessing, right? Is when someone attacks you or says something about you, whatever, right? You're not disturbed by it. It's just going to roll right off for you because you know who you are. You're grounded in who you are. You know that, you're a good person and you know that that person is what? Just projecting. They're just projecting. The majority of shit that happens in relationships is projection and mirroring, honestly. It really is. It really is. And people can't see it. We're so blind to that. Like people cannot see it. People are really our ego blinds us, you guys. Our ego is blinding. The ego is ruled by the sun. Okay? The sun, when it's out, the sun is so bright that you can't see anything else. This is why the nature of the ego, it's blinding. It blinds us to truth. It blinds us to what's actually happening, right? When we start getting our ego involved, and many of you, you've probably been in a situation like this to where you got your ego involved and you were taking it personal. And guess what? You find out after the fact, later on down the line, that it had nothing to do with you. It wasn't even about you to begin with, okay? And you had come up with a whole narrative and a whole story about how that person hated you or how that person attacked you or how that person whatever. And it had absolutely nothing to do with you. But your ego wanted to come up with that narrative, right? Your ego wanted to come up with that story, right? To take it personal. Someone said it's so hard to not take it personal. Yes, it's really, really hard. Imagine having Leo placements. You have a Cancer sun, but imagine being a Leo. It's really hard to not take things personal when you have Leo stuff, right? But we got to have the wherewithal. We got to have that awareness of like the majority of things that, we experience in our relationships, are projection, are mirroring, and have nothing to do with us. It's more about the lesson. You see what I'm saying? Not to take on projections, yeah. We love to take on, well, the thing is, we people love to project, right? People because the thing is that people many I'm speaking generally right now, but there's many people that do not that refuse to look deeply within themselves and that refuse to take accountability for their shadows or their poorness of character. And they expect us or they expect people outside of them to accept them as they are, right? You're going to accept me as this angry, destructive person. You're going to accept me as this cheater. You're going to accept me as, this depressed person. You're going to like people when they have listen how deep it goes, okay? Listen how deep it goes. People, they get attached to their negative shadowy qualities. They get attached to their anger. They get attached to rage. They get attached to betrayal. They get attached to their traumas of the past. People love to attach themselves to negative energy and negative things and negative qualities about themselves, right? And they'll get and it gets even worse because at some point that attachment becomes pride and arrogance. Yes, I'm an angry person. I'm proud of that. Yes, I'm selfish. Yes, a narcissist. Yes, like then they develop pride around their negative qualities. That's what the ego does. That's how blinding the ego can be so powerful and so blinding that it can actually make you believe that a negative, bad quality of character is good. That's how powerful the ego is. We can lie to ourselves so strongly that we can believe that we're doing good when we're actually doing bad or when we're actually causing harm. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. Um, but having this awareness, you know, if we know that people operate like this, then we can detach from our experience of people and we can give ourselves permission to objectively see people as they are and to, not judge them, but to actually factually have opinions of them that are based off of their actions, right? And one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes people will confuse judgment for a pattern that they have. I'm not judging you. You're an addict. That's not judgment. Look at your behaviors. Look at your patterns. You know what I mean? That's not judgment. I'm just stating an observational truth for you. That this is a pattern of you are an angry person. You have a pattern of getting angry. I'm not judging you for that. That is not even an opinion. That is fact. That's truth. Look at your pattern. Look at you do this all the time, right? And it's crazy because people do not want to be held accountable to their patterns and their behaviors. They don't want that. They don't like that. A lot of people don't like that. They don't want to be called out. They don't want to see people. Let me tell you, many people don't want to be seen. They hate being seen. This is why they don't like going to therapists. This is why they don't like going to tarot readers and astrologers. There's a lot of people when they have a prideful, defensive ego, okay, they don't want to be seen. They don't want anyone to tell them who they are, okay? Because they're attached to their negative qualities. They're attached to their ego, to their identity. They accept that part about themselves and they love that part about themselves and they enjoy sometimes they even enjoy being those evil, hateful, mean people. They enjoy that. It's doing something for them. It's feeding their ego in some type of way. So I just wanted to bring this up really quick because I think, there's a lot of us learning very important. The sun's in Libra. It's Libra season, right? Like a lot of us are learning very important lessons right now about relationships, especially as Venus has been transiting the South Node in Virgo, you know what I mean, over the last few weeks. We have been learning these very powerful lessons in relationships and about others and stuff like that. And sometimes the lesson is, being able to see people accurately as they are and being able to respond to them accordingly, you know? I'm drinking a detox tea. It's roasted dandelion spice by Yogi Teas. Mm, it's actually really good. And I'll even read you guys a little thing. It says, celebrate your successes and failures. Both required great courage. Very important on this full moon in Aries day. Celebrate your successes and failures. Both required great courage. Love that. I've been working on like my kidney health, my liver health, and my pancreas and my spleen. I've been working on my digestive health. So I've been drinking a lot of like nettle tea and fennel tea and dandelion and what's another one? Chamomile, ginger, turmeric. I've been drinking a lot of those herbal teas to get my liver, my pancreas, my gallbladder, and my spleen, and my kidneys back up to function. Well, they're doing great, but a little detox is good. Someone said sometimes it's also the reckoning of all the ways they've wronged or have been wronged. Accountability is hard. Yeah, accountability is hard. It's a lot easier for us to hold other people accountable than to hold ourselves accountable. Personal accountability is a Saturn thing, you know. It's really hard to hold ourselves accountable. You know, it requires a great degree of humbleness and it requires a great degree of self-awareness to be able to acknowledge where you've been wrong, where you messed up, and to be able to apologize. But it's a mark of a great soul. Those are qualities that are, you know, that really are the highest when it comes to human qualities or human attributes, you know, like forgiveness, compassion, you know, being humble, being able to apologize, you know, truthfully, authentically apologize and like to acknowledge when you wrong somebody and to be able to feel it, you know. These are qualities of a great soul, of a highly developed soul, you know. Very, you can see, look at today. I mean, look what's going on today. People have their hearts have gone cold. People have forgotten what compassion and unconditional love looks like. People have forgotten about, you know, basic principles of love thy neighbor. You know what I mean? Like these are basics. Like come on, Christians, Catholics, you guys are missing out on the basics. These are the basics. Basics. Love your neighbor. You know what I mean? Be compassionate. Treat others with respect. You know, help the poor. These are basic. These are simple. They don't even have a grasp of the basics. That's the simple stuff. We're not even talking about forgiveness yet. We're not even getting into, you know, apologizing. These are, you know, those are, you can't even talk to them about forgiveness and what it means to apologize because they don't even understand the basics. Compassion, for you know, like treating people with respect and kindness. Those are simple basic qualities that a lot of people find very hard to do nowadays apparently. It's crazy. And that it's all ego, it's all greed, it's all ego, greed, selfishness. You know, all these Trump people, all these, you know, extreme right people, they're all selfish, they're all narcissistic, they're all egotistical, they're all greedy, they're all self-preservationists. And also, they hate intelligence. They're all ignorant. Ignorance, right? There's an anti-intellectual movement happening right now where people are becoming prideful about their stupidity. That's what we're seeing here. That's why they're anti-college. That's why they're anti-students. That's why they want to defund the colleges. That's why they're like they don't care about the facts. You could tell them, "Oh yeah, well this is the statistic for blah blah," and they don't give a shit. They don't care about the statistics. They don't care about the information. They don't care about research. They don't care about what the, you know, what the studies say. They don't because there's a movement right now that's happening here in the States that's anti-intellectual, anti-college, anti-student, anti-learning, anti-information. You got to understand that, you know. That's why you can't level with these people because they're like, "Oh, you're just another libtard, you know, trying to think you're smarter than me." Well, yes, actually, yeah. Actually, yes, I am smarter than you. Exactly. Yeah, and it makes you mad. They're mad about it. See, the thing is, they're mad that they couldn't go to college. They're mad that they're not educated. They're mad that they don't have a job. They're mad about all these things. And then we live in a political system right now that is telling them, right, the reason why you don't have jobs is because of these trans people. It's because of these Mexicans. It's because of these people of color. It's because of these women, right? And that's not the truth. That's a lie. But because they're not educated, they don't have access to the information. They don't have the openness of mind to understand that they're just being deceived and lied to, right? And so they just want to cover it up with their ego. It's sad. It's unfortunate. It's sad. You know, I really do feel, I deeply believe that for a lot of the Trump supporter people, it's not their fault. We live in a society, we live in a country, especially here in the States, that has failed us deeply, that has failed to educate us, you know, and that intentionally has not educated us so that they can, you know, set up a situation, a political situation like we have today. You know what I mean? There's a reason why they've been going back on education and why education has been getting defunded over the last like 20 years, you know, here in the States. Why education has just gotten worse and worse here in the States. It's because there's these politicians that have been preparing, you know, preparing us for this political time where they acknowledge, oh wait, intelligent people usually vote left. People that are educated and go to college usually vote left. They're usually liberal. Where people that are conservative, people that are a little bit more right-leaning, right? They are the ones that are the least educated. The more education you are, the more exposure you have to wisdom and knowledge and culture, the more tolerant you become. Period. You go and travel the world and you come into contact with all these different cultures. Well, guess what? You're going to develop compassion for them because you've experienced them firsthand. They're not just some stereotype that you can go ahead and have bias and prejudice against, right? It's like, no, actually, these are real people. These are real human beings. They're just like us, right? And that's one of the things that college and education does is it makes you more tolerant of others because you start to learn about other ways of thinking, other ways of seeing, other ways of perceiving the world, and also about other cultures and stuff. That's why Jupiter in Sagittarius in the ninth house are all, that's why Jupiter rules college. You come into contact with all these people from different places, and it expands your understanding of the world, right? Gives you that kind of wisdom and that knowledge, which is what Jupiter's about. Jupiter's about cultural contact, wisdom that we gain from knowledge and from cultural contact, from traveling and stuff. So, you know, anyways, I digress. Let me get back to the week ahead astrology because I could just be on my political. I could be on my political whatchamacallit, my political high horse, my political pulpit all day if I wanted to, but we'll save that for another time. All right, so let's get back to the astrology of the week ahead. So we were talking about Thursday. The moon in Taurus on Thursday. The moon is going to form this beautiful trine with Venus around 4 p.m. Pacific time. So 4 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday, October 9th. It's going to form this trine with Venus. And to me, that's like a moment of harmony and balance. To me, that's a moment of emotional integration when it comes to certain lessons that we've been learning. We actually have a grand cross in the sky between Moon, Saturn, not a grand cross, a sacred rectangle, actually. We have Moon and Saturn in a sextile. We have Moon trine Venus, and we have Venus and Lilith in Scorpio in a sextile. And then, so they're forming these two trines, Moon trine Venus, Saturn trine Lilith, and then Venus is sextile Lilith, and the Moon is sextile Saturn. So there's this beautiful sacred rectangle in the sky on Thursday, and I think this can be a very harmonious, balanced day. This can be a day where we're feeling very grounded or very stable, or where we reach some kind of harmony or reach some kind of peace or something when it comes to connections and relationships and stuff like that. Okay, it's especially like Thursday, like by the end of the day, it's looking really good. It's feeling really good. Okay. Um, and then let's keep going. Also, if there's any aspects that I miss, please feel free to bring them up. Okay. If there's an aspect that I miss that I don't call out or something. You guys still with me? Everyone still here? Okay. And then the moon, right Friday morning, the moon goes into Gemini. Yep, I'm looking at like 1 a.m. Friday morning, and the moon is in Gemini, separating from Uranus. So we have Moon, Uranus, trine, Pluto. We have the moon in Gemini. To me, this is looking like a weekend of protests. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the moon hitting Uranus, trine that Pluto. To me, it's kind of giving like, I think it's another weekend, my loves, of just protests and people being very social, and people being outside and people marching. This Uranus Pluto trine is activating like crazy. This Uranus Pluto trine that we have in the sky right now has just been mobilizing the people. Like we've been seeing like all around the world. There's just been a lot of protests and stuff. And we're gonna see more of that starting Friday with the moon hitting Uranus and trining Pluto and the moon. Yeah, we're gonna see a lot of that. I think we're gonna see a lot of that this upcoming weekend, the 10th, 11th, and 12th of October. But yeah, the moon in Gemini is going to be very, very stimulating, very social. Also, the moon in Gemini is being disposited by Mercury in Scorpio. So this is our first moon in Gemini transit that we're experiencing with Mercury in Scorpio. So, there could be things around, well, actually, if you put Gemini on the ascendant, you have Mercury in the 12th, in the sixth house. So I do think it's going to be a very busy weekend, but there may be some Mercury in Scorpio, hidden motives, things family secrets coming up. I don't know why. Moon in Gemini, Moon in Mercury in Scorpio. I was kind of thinking like family secrets, or you get some information from the boss or something like that that's like hidden, or you hear some gossip or something. But we're gonna be feeling very passionate. Also, Mercury and Mars are together in Scorpio, so it might be a very sexual weekend or very desire-driven weekend, where we end up finding out someone likes us, and we're a little shocked or surprised by that or something. Mercury and Scorpio. But it's going to be a very busy weekend. A lot of travel, a lot of short distance, long distance travel. A lot of people, being very busy in the town and stuff like that, hanging out with their aunts, hanging out with their uncles, hanging out with their siblings, things like that. It's going to be a pretty busy weekend, I think. So Friday, right? Friday, the moon goes into Gemini. And what's interesting about Friday is the moon in Gemini that day, right? What also happens that day is we have Venus and Saturn come into an opposition, okay? So to me, this is what I was saying before when I was talking about the Venus Saturn opposition. To me, there's like serious conversations that we have to deal with or that we have to talk about or something with that Venus Saturn opposition. There's something around boundaries, there's something about codependency, there's something about responsibilities and obligations. There's also maybe, contracts and commitments that come down on Friday. Maybe, there's something that we want to, that we agree to. Maybe there's something that we sign on Friday. Also, we may have an interaction with the government entity or something like this because that Venus Saturn opposition. This could also be about purchases, purchases of things. We might want to buy something that's very important to us with that Saturn Venus opposition. But there's something around that Saturn Venus opposition though that I am getting tension with around like relationships and stuff like that and our partnership. So I think that's something we just want to be aware of, okay? Venus opposite Saturn on Friday as the moon goes into Gemini. All right, let me take a look. Let's see what the moon is doing here. I'm gonna keep going here on Friday. Oops. Oopsie daisy. There we go. All right. Let's go by 6 arguments here. So the moon's gonna be trining the sun that the moon is trining the sun on Friday, going to Saturday. We have the sun, so we wake up Saturday morning with the moon trining the sun, and that feels really good. The sun in Libra, the moon in Gemini, and they're in a beautiful trine with each other. Very socially active weekend, okay? See, also maybe a lot of maybe celebrations, attending like celebrations, so like birthday parties or weddings and stuff like that. The sun in Libra, trine the moon in Gemini. There's an integration and a harmony that's happening between the sun and the moon on Saturday. When the luminaries are looking at each other positively, we tend to feel very inspired, very motivated, very energetic. There tends to be like an openness in the air. But I want you guys to keep in mind though, there is that Saturn Venus opposition though. So make sure you don't commit to too many plans or take on too many tasks or take on too much like obligation this weekend. You want to have a little bit of like some wiggle room, some freedom, with the sun in Libra, trine the moon in Gemini. I think we need space, we need freedom, we need to kind of have fun this weekend. But there might be moments, with Saturn opposite Venus where you have like some kind of obligation or some kind of responsibility. The sun in Libra is being disposited by Venus and Virgo, who's opposing Saturn. So, they're also, I just want you guys to be mindful of canceled plans or delayed plans or something like that this weekend with Venus opposite Saturn. There might be something that you guys were going to do. There might be a performance or something, but then for some reason it gets canceled or it gets delayed, okay, with the Saturn opposite Venus. So just be mindful of that Friday night going into Saturday. But yeah, the sun trine the moon on Saturday is a vibe. It's a vibe, I will say. This weekend is feeling like it's kind of like fun. Why are they calling me? I'll call them back. Okay, can you guys hear me? We still there? We're gonna wrap up here in a bit. Not too much happening. Not too much happening this weekend with the astrology of the weekend. It's kind of like or this week. All we have is Mercury going to Scorpio. We have a Mercury Mars conjunction. We have Saturn opposite Jupiter. Oh, I'm sorry, we have Saturn opposite Venus this week, but not really much going on this week when it comes to the astrology. What I will say is, oh, Okay. Ooh, 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 ooh. We have, as the moon gets the last degrees of Gemini on Saturday, the moon's going to square Venus and square Saturn. Okay. So this is going to be around 6 p.m. on Saturday. We love the moon trine the sun midday Saturday, but the moon square Venus, the moon square Saturn, this can be like a moment of disconnect or a moment, like a challenging moment when it comes to relationships or partnerships or our obligations or responsibilities. So make sure you don't forget any of your weekend plans. If you have weekend plans, write them down, Venus and Virgo, okay? Also, be mindful of going out with friends this weekend that are drink too much or they party too much or they're just a person of excess. That moon in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces squaring Venus in Virgo can be, it could be like just a tense or challenging situation when it comes to our social engagements or our celebrations or the activities of Saturday evening. Okay, so um, yeah, the moon. No, actually, the moon's going to go into Cancer on Sunday. So we have the moon at 26 degrees. I'm looking at 6 p.m. Saturday, October 11th Pacific time. I'm looking at moon at 26, square Saturn at 26, squaring Venus at 27. So this is a T square in the sky between moon, Saturn, and Venus, right? And this can be this can be a few things. This could also be miscommunication issues. I'm just thinking about moon and Gemini, Mercury and Scorpio, moon square Venus, moon square Saturn. So like something that we didn't say, something that we didn't remember, or we misheard something. So be very clear with communication on Saturday. Be very intentional with what you say. Watch out for, being too critical of others or being too judgmental and things like this. Watch out for overconsumption with Moon Square Venus. Watch out for overconsumption, overspending that can get you in trouble or something like that. And also be very aware of your boundaries and your limitations this weekend, okay? Especially on Saturday going into Sunday. Be very aware of your limitations. Saturn, Moon Square Venus. Venus and the Moon are both aspecting Saturn. So this tells us that we got to be aware of our boundaries, that we're aware of our limitations. We got to be aware of the rules and the regulations. We need to go home if we need to go home in a timely manner, make sure we do that, okay? Because Moon and Venus are both being aspected by Saturn, and there could just be a Saturn energy in the air over the weekend that's like, oh wait, it's time to go home. Oh wait, a Saturn energy could show up and be like, oh wait, you guys can't party no more. You can't party over here. You got to go home. Or oh wait, it's too late. You guys need to go to bed or something. So just be aware of that Saturn square Moon, Saturn square Venus, okay? So then on Sunday, the moon goes into Cancer. The moon's going to be at 0 degrees Cancer right at midnight, like going into October 12th of Sunday. And the moon in Cancer kind of puts us in like a home family, kind of like lazy type of vibe, okay? The moon in Cancer is also going to be our cardinal wax waning square from our full moon in Aries. So the moon in Cancer, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday might be very triggering or it might activate something for our full moon narrative or full moon story. So, if there's something that you have to go through, there's something you have to experience for the full moon in Aries, the full moon in Aries is aspecting you. The moon in Cancer may trigger or activate something over those days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Okay. But right as the moon goes into Cancer, it's going to make a square with Neptune and Aries. So that I don't know why that's kind of giving like some people waking up hungover or some people kind of waking up very foggy or very tired or very exhausted on Sunday. I won't be surprised if we people are partying and going hard on Saturday and very busy, but then on Sunday they're like just staying at home and they're like with family because the moon goes from Gemini to Cancer right at midnight. But the moon is going to square Neptune that morning, and so that square to Neptune can be a little confusing, or it can be we wake up a little groggy, or we're just feeling a little tired, a little exhausted, and something like that when we wake up in the morning on Sunday. And then the moon keeps going. Oh wow. So then on Sunday around noon, the moon actually makes a trine to Mercury and Saturn and Scorpio. So that trine of Mercury and Saturn, I'm sorry, that what I meant to say was Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. The moon in Cancer around 12 p.m. Yeah, I'm looking at actually 12. Let's see, they're at 8 and and 13. So the moon actually hits a trine with Mercury first, and then by 6 p.m., the moon trines Mars. So that moon trine Mercury, moon trine Mars is feeling very inspiring. It's feeling very passionate. It's feeling like very open emotional communication. I think this is a great day to have conversations that are very deep and very powerful, or very transformational. I also think this is a good day for kind of like revealing things or bringing things out into the light, because the astrology kind of caters towards like there being some kind of ease or some kind of grace, or there being some kind of, it's really, it's like the emotional energy at this time feels very grounded or very stable. It is a full moon in Aries cycle, though, so we just want to be aware of that. But I love the moon trine Mercury and the moon trine Mars. That feels like a very supportive thing. We can also receive a piece of information that is like very important or very powerful or very transformational, or that kind of like changes things for us with that moon trine Mercury, that moon trine Mars. This is kind of giving like staying at home though, like being with your lovers, being with family. This is kind of like giving like, the moon in Cancer, Mercury, Mars, Scorpio. It's more so about privacy. It's more so about like withholding, and it's more so about like being to the self in some type of way, or being with others that we share a very, being with our family or being in the home environment or something. So but I love the trines to Mercury and Mars though. Moon trine Mercury is kind of harmonization, or this kind of balance, or even an integration moment of integration between what we're feeling, what we're thinking, between and also there may be some kind of patterns that you want to maybe, with that moonshine Mars, moonshine Mercury on Sunday, you want to start a new task, or you want to start something new. You want to maybe commit to a new, routine or a new pattern in some type of way. I don't know why. I was seeing that combination of Mercury Mars is like committing to something that we're passionate about, or even being more routined about the way that we, are pursuing our passions, or pursuing things that are, that matter to us, or even if there's something that we want to transform or change in our life, maybe it's a habit or behavior, we commit to like being more disciplined, or we commit to even adopting a new habit or something with moonshine Mercury, moonshine Mars. I think it's a good day to like start something new. Moonshine Mercury, moonshine Mars. It's also a great day to be creative, to be expressive, to like dance. Maybe it's also a good day to be by the water, to do water rituals and things like that. Moon and Cancer, trine Mercury and Mars in Scorpio. You might find something, your mom might tell you something very shocking on Sunday, October 12th. It's a possibility. Or you might find something out about the family. It's very, very dramatic. One of the things I do want to say though is like we are going to be seeing people pass now that we're kind of like in the season where the sun is in its fall, and then we're gonna go into Scorpio season, and we're gonna have Mars there. We're gonna be seeing some people pass away, my loves. There's gonna be kind of endings. I think we're in this period of endings, especially with Jupiter and Saturn coming to this trine. We're seeing like, elderly people are going back. It's really like I think it's the Pluto and Cancer generation. The Pluto and Cancer generation, many of them are like going back to God, and you know, their time has come. Their time has come, you know? And yeah, and that's where we wrap up the week. So, all right, so let's do a little recap before we wrap up, okay? This live, and I go ahead and post it on YouTube in a few hours, or in a few minutes. I'm actually gonna post it pretty quickly. All right, so full moon in Aries this week, okay? Full moon in Aries. It's about your independence. It's about your power. Sun in Libra opposite the moon in Aries. It's about how you maintain your passions, your individuality, your personal authority within the realm of relationships. Libra, Sun in Libra, moon in Aries. It's about expressing the things that you're frustrated or angry about. It's about revealing, Mars, the dispositor of the full moon in Aries is Mars in Scorpio, revealing things that are hidden, okay? Bringing things out into the light, letting people know that, hey, I've been feeling this, I've been thinking about this. We want to bring it out, we want to let it out, okay? Things that we need to watch out for this week during our full moon and Aries cycle: being excessively combative, being angry, burning bridges that we do not want to burn down, okay? Being very intentional with the way that we're expressing our Mars energy, building a healthy relationship with Mars, being assertive, being passionate, being driven, being courageous, but not being mean, angry, combative for the sake of it, okay? Like everything with intention when it comes to Mars, okay? We have a Venus Saturn opposition that's happening on Friday. That's going to be a reality check for a lot of our relationships, for partnerships, for money, financial situations. That could be about big purchases and stuff like that. We also have a Mercury in Scorpio. So Mercury goes into Scorpio today. Mercury's going to be in Scorpio until the 29th of October. So that focuses our mind more towards things that are emotional in nature, that, have a lot to do with the past, that are more occult or taboo or hidden or secret in nature, right? Things like that. With Mercury and Scorpio. And then there was one more aspect that I think was kind of like important that I wanted to talk about. Hold on, where was it? There was one more. It was the Saturn opposite Venus. That one was an important one. What was the other one? Was that the only one? No, I'm not Oh, Venus sextile Jupiter. Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah, Venus sextile Jupiter. So yeah, so we have a beautiful Venus Jupiter sextile on Wednesday. Yeah, that's the other one that I really like. I'm really liking the Venus sextile Jupiter, even though some will consider that a minor aspect. I love that aspect. I think it's great for partnership, for connection, especially for meeting new people and for vacationing and traveling, or even like for travel plans. Venus sextile Jupiter is like good. So if you wanted to like plan a vacation or, pay for the tickets or something on Wednesday, or, if you meet someone new on Wednesday, don't be surprised because it is Jupiter and Venus sextiling each other. That aspect actually goes exact on Wednesday, October 8th. Okay. But yeah, I love you all so much. Thank you guys for being here. Have a beautiful week ahead. Okay. Take care of yourselves. Be well. Don't fall for the crisis and the drama. Don't take the bait. Okay. Be intentional with the way that you exert your Mars energy. No fighting just for the sake of fighting. All right. And before you burn a bridge, ask yourself if you're going to need it later on. All right. Before you burn a bridge, ask yourself, am I going to need this bridge at some point, in the future? You know what I mean? Um, because yeah, you know, sometimes that Aries destructive energy can do more damage than it's worth, and it can mess us up. So, all right, my loves, mwah, I love you all so much. Have a beautiful week. I'll see you around. I'm gonna go ahead and post this on YouTube. So if you guys want to go back on and watch it on YouTube, you can. Yes, thank you everyone that, showed up today and who hung out and was here for the last hour and a half roughly. And I will see you guys on Instagram. Okay, take care. All right, bye. Ah, where's the monkey? Oh, what is he doing over there?